Could this year's Kentucky basketball team somehow be better than we expect them to be? Well, the players on the team certainly think that's the case.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, going to talk about some interesting quotes from Mohamed Diabate and Denzil Aberdine about the strengths of this team and just how good the Wildcats can be this season. Also on today's episode, if you've been following along with the Wildcats on social media, you've noticed they've been putting out some practice highlights, and well, we're going to break down the starters and the players coming off the bench, at least for now, for Kentucky. I think there's some interesting things that we can take away from that, as well as Joe Lunardi. He does not quit. Bracketology has been released in June. Can you believe it? The Wildcats aren't moving up. I don't know if that's necessarily a good or a bad thing. I'll leave it up to you to decide. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when their first $5 bet wins. You can visit FanDuel.com to get started. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. I want to remind everyone out there, we're free and available on all platforms. If you've not subscribed yet on YouTube, I would love it if you did so. Trying to get to 20,000 subscribers before the start of the college basketball season. Thank you so much to everyone who has subscribed as of late, and if you haven't yet, would love it if you did so. Kentucky basketball might somehow be better than we currently expect them to be. Now, the thing that I've continued to come back on, the refrain that I've continued to hit upon over and over and over as we wade deeper and deeper into the summer, is that there's one aspect of this team that is going to be so much better than last season that's going to put this team relative to a season ago in a completely new stratosphere, and that is the defense. The defense is what will set this team apart from the not just last year, but the past several seasons of Kentucky basketball. There has not been physicality at the rim. There has not been speed on the defensive side of the ball. There's not been a lot of want to when it comes to stopping the drive, and it has hindered Kentucky's ability to play as dominantly as they possibly could have because they just cannot stop the opposing team from scoring. It's been so frustrating to watch at times. This last year's team was one of the worst defenses in the Power 6, I should say, before they started to lock in towards the back third of the season. They started to play a lot better, better collectively, I should say, despite some injuries. They went from 112th or like 114th, and adjusted defensive efficiency on KenPom all the way up inside the top 50. The defense this year, with the personnel that Kentucky now has, is going to set it apart from other teams. And the team itself, the players have started to discuss that here as summer practices have gotten underway. A couple of interesting quotes here from Mohamed Diabate and Denzil Aberdine about how good this team could be. And it starts with Diabate. If I'm not mistaken, Kentucky Sports Radio was the outlet that got these quotes out on YouTube, if you want to go find those. I believe they also made these into articles as well. If you guys want to go check that out, always try and do my best to credit where interviews and such come from. But Mo Diabate said about the Kentucky defense, quote, "Man, I think it's probably going to be one of the best defensive teams Kentucky has seen in a while. We've got guys like Jayden Quaintance, who hasn't even played yet, like just knowing what he could do, and he's not even in practice yet. Like, that's scary. Guys like me, Otega Oweh, Denzil Aberdine, we take pride in defense. So I feel like that's something that the team needs. And I feel like it's going to be a real good year defensively for us. I don't think that's going to be one of the liabilities that we have." Very interesting wrap up to that quote there. He doesn't think that that's going to be an issue that the Wildcats have, which immediately prompted me to wonder, okay, what are some of the weaknesses of this Wildcats roster? If they are not, if one of them is not playing defense, which it has been for the last several seasons. Is it going to be shooting? Is it going to be playmaking? Is it going to be finding consistency, holding on to the basketball? That could be an issue for the Wildcats next season. Obviously, if the defense is going to be good, it's got to be something on the defense or offensive side of the ball that maybe Kentucky takes a step back in. Hopefully, hopefully, it's not rebounding. I have continued to harp on just how important rebounding is on both sides of the ball for the Wildcats, and I really hope that rebounding the ball outside of Jayden Quaintance is not a problem. Jayden Quaintance and Diabate, I guess I should say. Thank goodness we brought in Diabate to be the hard hat, hard-nosed, physical player on the wing that can play on both sides of the ball with brute force. If he doesn't think that the team is going to be a problem defensively, or is going to have problems defensively, I think it's a very good sign. He's pointing out multiple players here across the rotation. Quaintance, Oweh, Aberdeen himself, they take pride in playing defense. I really do hope that that's true, because if it is, as I have said all offseason long, defense gets better, the team is going to be very, very difficult to stop because of the system that Mark Pope has on the offensive side of the ball. Denzel Aberdine talked about how good this team could be and how good they could be defensively. He said, this team can be really good, man. We've got the size, we've got the length, we've got the athleticism to be one of the best defensive teams in the nation. So it's multiple players on the roster here. He continued, guys like Jayden Quaintance, like you said, Mo, all of them. I played past those past guys. Jayden definitely blocked me last year. I think Florida played Arizona State early in the season. And especially Mo, he's a great defender, especially rebounding. So I think we'll be very good on the defensive side. Multiple players saying, yeah, I don't think defense is going to be an issue. We want to play it. We like to play it. We're good at stopping teams from scoring. We've seen these guys before. All of these transfers that are coming in have seen each other in one way or shape or form, it feels like, with Quaintance at Arizona State, Aberdeen at Florida, Diabate at Alabama. And then Aberdeen got to an interesting quote here, comparing Kentucky's team to last year's Florida team. I want to get to that here in just a moment, because it is a fascinating quote. It's kind of the whole conversation of today. Is Kentucky actually better than we expect them to be? Before we dive into that, though, I'll tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. Summer sports here are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action, and why not make it a little more thrilling? Because with FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. Obviously, so many different ways to get involved with baseball right now. The Braves making a bit of a comeback here, only 4 games under 500 as of this recording. 5-0 against the Mets. Hey, if you want to go lace a little something down on the Braves versus Mets to close out this series in New York, I would encourage you to at least give it a look, because I'm going to be taking a look as well. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5, and they get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. You can open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, continuing along here on the Tuesday edition of Locked On Kentucky, Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Really appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would love it if you did so. Again, trying to get to 20,000 subs. And I want to ask you guys, as I normally do, if you've got any questions or comments for the show, drop them in the YouTube comments at Locked On UK on X/Twitter is where you can find me. If you want to ping me in a tweet, if you want to send me a DM, ask me a question for the show, I'll do my best to answer it here on Locked On Kentucky. But we're talking about Aberdeen and Diabate, discussing how good this Kentucky team could be and will be, at least according to their expectations, defensively. If that is the case, the Wildcats are going to be a very good team. A national championship caliber team, according to Denzil Aberdine. Because he started comparing Kentucky this year to Florida a season ago. Here's the quote. I see a lot of similarities. Bigs love to run there, and just as much here our bigs like to run. They play defense, and they play at a fast pace. So I think the bigs that we've got here are just as good or even better. I love these guys. I've been playing with them, and it hasn't been that long, but it's been great playing with them so far. So I think our team's got a real shot at winning number 9 this year. And I think we'll be ready. We'll shock a lot of people this year. So not only does Aberdeen say, they're similar to the team that I just won a title with, he actually gives specifics, and I don't think it's hyperbole. I don't think he's lying about this. I don't think he's just saying it just to say it. when you start to look at last year's Florida squad and what this team is going to be as far as the front court goes, you do start to see some similarities. I was not planning on this, but I will pull up KenPom because I love doing that so much. So last season for Florida, the Gators had what was essentially a 4-man rotation that they played, I think, pretty balanced minutes-wise between these 4 guys at the 4 and the 5. And that's Thomas Howe, that's Alex Condon, Ruben Chinyelu, and Micah Hanglotten. Those were the 4 guys that they played a ton. At 6'9", 6'11", 6'10", and 7'1". All of those guys were either sophomores, and Hanglotten was the only junior on the team because I believe he had played a season or so at Marshall. It might have been just one season at Marshall before he transferred over to Florida. You look at this year's Kentucky team, you're going to have Jayden Quaintance, Brandon Garrison, Malachi Marino, and Andrea Jelovich. Quaintance is probably going to end up taking a lot of time and attention, try not to sneeze here, at that 5 spot. But you've got a returning big man with a lot of experience in Garrison. You've got a 5-star freshman in Malachi Marino. And then you've got a 6'11" forward wing type player in Jelovich, who will play at the 4. He's not going to play at the 5. I think he's going to play at power forward. And then you start to look at some of the similarities statistically, what at least projecting this year's squad relative to last year's Florida team. Chinyelu was the big defensive monster down low for Florida at 6'10", 260. Probably see some similarities between him and Jayden Quaintance. I would argue, and I don't think a lot of people would debate this, even Florida fans, Quaintance is going to end up being a better defender than Chinyelu is, and he was last year. But you see some similarities there. Then maybe you look at a guy like Thomas Howe at 6'9", shot 103 threes last season. Probably going to see Jelovich do a similar thing. If he's going to get PT as a freshman European coming in at 20-plus years old, he's going to get some opportunities to not just be out there, but to shoot the ball. I hope, and I said this on a recent episode, I hope that he is more efficient than he was out in Europe, which he was shooting like 30, 31%. If he can bump that up 3-4 percentage points, I think that's very, very good for UK. He plays a role similar to maybe Howe did, being a good shooter at the foul line and then also pretty effective inside the arc. You see a guy like Alex Condon, who was way more involved maybe than any individual forward/center is going to be for UK. Also shot 58 threes. Maybe you compare him to a guy like Garrison because he also had a pretty decent assist rate. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was the highest out of all the bigs that I'm talking about here. Yes, it was at 15%. Maybe you compare him to a guy like Brandon Garrison at 6'11", 230 pounds. And then the last guy, Micah Hanglotten, at 7'1", 235, did not take a 3, didn't really play a ton. I believe he was hurt. He only played 16 games. But very effective whenever he got in the game inside the arc. You would probably see him play a role similarly to a guy like Malachi Marino in terms of being a high floor guy that's tall and physical. This guy was a really good defensive rebounder. According to this, he was a really good offensive rebounder. Actually might have been the best on the team in terms of just raw percentage, not maybe necessarily in terms of impact. But there are a lot of similarities, and Aberdeen's right, between these two programs and what they're doing in the front court. I just made the case for it, or statistically at least, and looking at them on paper, projecting what they'll do in the SEC this season, you start to look back at what Aberdeen said again. They play with pace. They like to run. I mean, system-wise, it's a little different, but I mean, they're going to get out there and be aggressive on both sides of the ball. They're going to play similarly in different aspects. So I think it's a really good observation from Aberdeen. And it's not just him running to the media to talk about, well, let me gas my guys up real quick. I think we're just as good, if not better, than the team that just won a title. I think he's actually serious, which is great. I think it's really, really good for Kentucky that they have that kind of hype heading into this year. Could Kentucky, because of their front court, end up being better than we expect? According to Diabate and Aberdeen, and they both make pretty solid cases as to why that's the case. I'm thrilled that these players seem to believe in themselves. They seem to like each other a lot, and they understand the assignment. It's number 9. Hopefully the front court has a lot to do with that. Pause for water here real quick. And then I want to talk about, this is more speculation than anything. Kentucky's been putting out videos on social media of the summer practices that they've been having. And as we've done for the last few years here, and this is what everybody's doing on social media, so I don't really feel like it's like crazy unique, but you start to notice who the starters and who the bench players are because of whether or not they're wearing blue or white jerseys. Now, obviously, you'll see in some of the videos, some players will wear a blue jersey one moment and then a white the next. But this seems to be, just based on what we've seen, the consistent starting 5 for now for Kentucky. At point guard, I would put Jalen Lowe, who is wearing a blue jersey. You also have Otega Oweh, who would play the 2 because Cam Williams is wearing a blue jersey, meaning he's part of the starting rotation right now. Diabate at the 4 and Brandon Garrison at the 5. This is almost identical to the starting 5 rotation that I projected maybe a month ago whenever I jokingly said, what if Kentucky runs a platoon? But I swapped Aberdeen and Cam to have more shooting coming off the bench for the white team. But this is how we thought it would go. Lowe, Oweh, Williams, Diabate, and Garrison. So those are the players right now that are wearing the blue jerseys, at least starting, quote-unquote, in practice. Who's not starting? Well, I'm glad you asked. Colin Chandler, Denzil Aberdine, although I believe at one point he was wearing a blue jersey. Trent Noah, Braden Hawthorne, who apparently has been playing very well. Reese Potter, and Malachi Marino. That's essentially a backup 5, by the way. Or a backup 5 plus Potter. And the best thing about this is that there are 3 players that are out. So who's out right now? Kentucky has Jasper Johnson playing with Team USA. He's going to be playing in Switzerland in like 4 days, I think. Jayden Quaintance is still recovering from injury. He's there at practice. He's just not like going full speed. And then Andrea Jelovic. You could argue, who hasn't moved to the United States yet, I don't think. You could argue those 3 players, you could look up at the end of the season and say those 3 players were the most impactful players on the floor for Kentucky throughout the course of the season. Otega Oweh withstanding. But, yeah, you've got 3 major pieces out of the rotation right now, and yet you still look at that starting 5 of Lowe, Oweh, Williams, Diabate, and Garrison. Still you feel pretty freaking good about it. You swap Garrison out for Quaintance at the 5. You put Jelovic possibly at the 4. Or you could let Diabate start. I would lean towards Diabate starting. And Jelovic coming off the bench. You have Cam at small forward. And then Otega and Lowe. And then you rotate in Jasper, Colin Chandler, Denzil Aberdine, Trent Noah. All of this to say, it's looking like we expected it to look, given the current state of the roster. Once these guys come back, Jelovic, Quaintance, Jasper, we'll maybe see. I would assume Quaintance would be part of the starters. I would assume. If not, it's an incredible bench unit that you're bringing in. Because let's just throw this out hypothetically. Jasper, Aberdeen, Chandler, Jelovic, Quaintance. I mean, that's crazy. You've also got Braden Hawthorne, who has been coming along nicely, and then Marino, a 5-star center, waiting. And Trent Noah, who had that crazy dunk that was posted the other day. He could end up being either like the 12th best guy in this rotation, or he could end up being like somebody that comes off the bench as like the 7th man and is very impactful. Who knows? Trent Noah yet to be determined. Same for Chandler, I feel like. But anyway, all this to say, it's all going in the right direction. Reports coming out of summer so far, summer practices have been awesome. And I'm really glad the kids seem to be buying into this thing. And what they're saying is really got me hyped up. I mean, this could be a really fun year, guys. I'm so excited. The final thing I wanted to talk about today to end the show, and this is not like breaking news. This is not seriously important. But Joe Lunardi has put out bracketology. Shocking that he's throwing them up here in June. The more interesting thing to me is where Kentucky is at least just vibes-wise for Lunardi. He's got them as a 3 seed, as they were a season ago. They would be playing against UNC Wilmington, the Seahawks, as we are very familiar with. But I just don't agree with that. I think Kentucky should be a 2 seed. UConn, Michigan, St. John's, and Tennessee. I would have Kentucky over UConn and Tennessee definitely. Maybe even Michigan as well. Probably on the same playing field, at least on paper, according into the season in my eyes. But yeah, UConn does not deserve to be a 2 seed. Tennessee does not deserve to be a 2 seed. Not over a couple of the teams on the 3 seed line. I think BYU should be a 2. And I think Kentucky should be a 2. You've also got, by the way, you've got Arizona, who I don't think is a 3 seed. Probably not. And then you've got Iowa State. Houston, Florida, Purdue, and Duke as the 1 seeds here in the bracketology. Not a whole lot of argument with that. But yeah, Kentucky should be a 2. I don't understand why UConn, after having the year that they had and bringing in pieces that don't exactly thrill me, are just all of a sudden like, oh, let's pencil them in as a top 8 team in the country. I don't see it. I don't see it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at LanceDaw_. You can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, you can leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And God bless.